The October 1st, 2019 meeting of the Mount Vernon Board of Education to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Mitchell. Trustee Patterson.
Present.
Trustee Miller.
Here.
Trustee Williams.
Present.
Trustee McOwen.
Present.
Trustee Ning. Trustee Saunders.
Here.
Trustee Torres.
Present.
Trustee White.
Present.
Quorum is present.
Thank you. This past May, the voters of the district overwhelmingly approved allowing a student from one of the district's high schools to serve as an ex officio member of the Mount Vernon City School District Board of Trustees. Tonight, the Board of Trustees will take action appointing a junior from Mount Vernon High School to serve on the board for the duration of this school year. We are pleased to welcome Nicholas Justino to our group and look forward to his contributions to our school district and community. Dr. Hamilton, do you have anything you would like to add regarding this appointment?
I was able to interview a couple of the students who were under consideration, and then they were asked to submit a letter of interest to me. And so I wholeheartedly endorse Nicholas' candidacy for the board. I think he's going to be a fine representation. We will be working to identify an alternate as well on those occasions where Nicholas may not be available for us. But I think he's going to be a formidable opponent, if you will, representing his classmates and colleagues.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. May I have a motion to appoint Nicholas Justino to the Board of Trustees? Second?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Congratulations. Mr. McCormick, can you please administer the oath of office?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did you need me in the front? You can come this way. It's there.
Hey, Wanda.
Hey,
How are you?
Awesome.
fine.
Want to turn them into a pump?
Yeah.
Repeat after me. I, Nicholas Justino,
I, Nicholas Justino,
do
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of ex officio
of ex officio
member of the school board.
member of the school board.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Dr. Hamilton, do you have a report this evening?
I do. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to begin my report by first congratulating Nicholas on his appointment to the board this evening. And I'd like to share a statement with the board and the public, if I may. I want to take this opportunity to extend to the Mount Vernon community, particularly the parents, students, and families of Parker School, my sincerest apologies for what transpired last week regarding the hiring of third grade teacher Rebecca Antonazzi. I can report to you that Mrs. Antonazzi has not and will not be returning to the classroom to teach in our school district. While many of you have understandably requested more information concerning the foregoing, please know that the district has an obligation to ensure that confidentiality rights of all of our staff members are honored at all times. This sometimes limits the amount of information that we are able to share with parents, notwithstanding our desire to do so. We will continue to provide you with as much information as possible to ensure that we are fully informing you of the situation, particularly as it relates to the educational experience of your children. But we must do so in a lawful manner. Please know that the district will ensure that each child in our district continues to receive a high-quality educational experience, which we have all grown accustomed to expect over the last several years. To that end, a long-term substitute has been in place in the classroom since last week, and we have begun reviewing applications for permanent replacement. While this is an unfortunate situation, sometimes good things can come out of bad situations. First, we are conducting a complete review of the screening and hiring process used to recruit and hire staff, taking a proactive stance on how we address the issues of cultural sensitivity in our educational environment, and how we plan to diversify our certificated workforce. As this investigation concludes, we will immediately implement safeguards and protocols to ensure that we not only recruit and hire top-tier candidates, but we also find people who are a right fit for our district and are best able to address the needs of our students and our community. Of all the factors that our school controls, teacher quality is one of the most that affects student achievement, and that comes from research by Linda Darling-Hamming, who is a noted educational researcher. Districts need to know which teachers and administrators they want to hire and where in the school district they want them to work, and then go out to hire those teachers as quickly and effectively as possible. There's an interview committee chairperson who needs to be familiar with the knowledge, skills, experiences, and beliefs that we're looking for in administrators and teachers. Equally important, they need to be adept at developing ways to uncovering those qualities through the screening and interview process. So to that end, the Mount Vernon City School District shall commit to working in collaboration with various constituents for the purpose of integrating multiple perspectives in the interview process for our certificated administrators and teachers, and adhering to relevant recruitment policies, protocols, and procedures. So we have added some additional layers to our hiring process as a result of this incident. In continuation of the district's commitment to improving teacher leaders and instructional delivery, the superintendent and cabinet have worked diligently to plan a year-long series on implicit bias, which will help us to avoid situations, unfortunately, that have kind of led to this issue in our district. The training will begin immediately for all schools and all staff members, and it is a mandated training. This endeavor is made possible through a grant secured through the New York State Department of Education, and the kickoff already began with Dr. Emden at the superintendent's convocation and the administrator's retreat. We are also reaching out to historically black colleges and universities and local area colleges that offer graduate education programs for assistance with enhancing diversity. Names of tri-state schools with teacher and administrative programs include Concordia, Iona, Manhattan, Rutgers, Manhattanville, Mercy, Pace, Sacred Heart, Fairfield, and SUNY and CUNY schools. So in addition to the compact process, we have added an additional step which will include a Google search at the building level, and then being repeated and statements of assurance to be provided by the interviewing committee. But there will also be an additional level of scrutiny at the superintendent's level. Heretofore did not exist in the hiring of teachers. So there will be someone designated on my staff whose responsibility will be to review those statements of assurances at the school level and provide proof that the Google search was done, and then complete a second Google search and social media search to identify any information that we may need to take into consideration before making recommendations toward the full board. And that is my statement as it relates to that incident that came to my attention last Saturday or Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Are there any communications from the public this evening?
Good evening. The Mount Vernon City School District Board of Education recognizes the critical importance of community discourse and involvement in the education of Mount Vernon's children, and accordingly, members of the public are invited to speak at each regularly scheduled board meeting, subject to the terms of board policy. Speakers must register in advance, no later than 4 p.m. the date of the meeting, by contacting myself, the district clerk, in person at 165 North Columbus Avenue, by phone at 914-665-5235, or via email at rmccormack@mtvernoncsd.org. The board welcomes all respectful comment, whether praise or criticism. However, identifying and criticizing a specific student, teacher, parent, administrator, or other Mount Vernon education official or employee is strictly prohibited. Such complaints must be presented and addressed through the proper administrative channels. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to speak, with up to an additional minute to be concluded for the speaker to summarize and conclude their remarks. If appropriate, board trustees and/or the superintendent or staff members at the direction of the superintendent may respond to a speaker's remarks at the conclusion of public comment period. Our first speakers this evening are representing the United Black Clergy, President Reverend Troy DeCohen, accompanied by Chair of the UBC Education Committee, Bishop C. Nathan Edwards, as well as Reverend Pogue and Reverend Morton.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We thank you for your statement, Dr. Hamilton, and we are here as a result of the hiring of the school teacher that egregiously offended our community and definitely children throughout these United States of color. We thank you for taking that time in your remarks and addressing points of concerns that we do have. That situation is behind us. But the situation that's before us, again, is the hiring practices. We still don't understand how she was hired, and her situation made national news. It wasn't something that was hidden. This was something that made national news. So we are standing here together to address the concern of the policies and practices through your HR, how you vet, how is a teacher selected, what information or searches are done in order to establish who they are and what things they have done within their lives, because this is serious. And then the other point that came out, in which we are concerned too, we started to think too, well, what is the racial makeup of the teachers in this school district? This district is predominantly African American and people of color. How many teachers represent that as well? And so that's a question that we need to address and to present to you. Some of our pastors, they have to leave because they have other obligations. So I'm just going to, we have Bible studies. It's true. All of us got Bible studies to teach at 7 p.m. All of us got to run. But I know Dr. Morton, he's more pressed because he's doing a joint Bible study. So, and then Dr. Paul.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
First of all, I think that Pastor DeCohen has kind of opened it up well. I think second of all, I want to say to you, Dr. Hamilton, thank you for the expeditious response to the community's outcry about the situation. I think that it was professional, it was appropriate, and it showed care and concern. And so standing here today, first of all, as a pastor of this community, one who born and raised here, came through this entire school district, credit everything that I am to the fact that my foundation started here. And then also as an adjunct professor in the School of Education at St. John's, where I've taught multiculturalism and taught human relationship in the classroom and things of that sort, and also understanding the importance of multiculturalism, cultural sensitivity, and all of that, and also our children being in environments in which they feel comfortable with who's in front of them. It's not just about some of the actions that we've heard about the teacher in which you have made reference to, but it's also about making sure that our children are able to see themselves in the people that teach them. And in addition to that, I think one of the other aspects of this is not just about cultural diversity, but it's also about environmental diversity, right? Those individuals that actually live here in Mount Vernon, those individuals that are accredited, that are able to teach our children, to administrate in school buildings where they can also live here. One of the things I do know is that children benefit when they are able to see their teacher in the supermarket that in the same town in which they live. And so I think that we need to make sure that when we audit our hiring practices, that we make sure that all of those factors are incorporated in that, and so that we can make sure that we're evaluating periodically what our school our teaching staff, our administrative staff, our maintenance staff, all of them look like as it pertains to they reflect on our children. And so we look forward to hearing more from you. And we also want you to know we're not here as adversaries. We're here as partners to say that we need to work together to make sure that this happens, not only in the school district, in the school buildings, but also in our churches and places of faith.
I too just want to echo everything that was said. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton, for your quick response to this unfortunate situation. And thank you for your statement. Your statement was very informative. It's my hope and prayer that the public will continue to be informed about the process and the progress that you're making on the things that you have just said in your statement. I also want to applaud reaching out to HBCUs for those who are in education. My daughter, who just graduated from Mount Vernon High School last year, is at Spelman College, majoring in education, so hopefully you can recruit her back to Mount Vernon and pay her tuition. But in all seriousness, that also hopefully in those hiring practices, that the trustees would also be involved to vote on who's being hired and vote on who's being fired and those practices. So maybe somebody else would have caught another layer of protection of making sure that we're hiring the right people at the right time for our students. Mount Vernon School District is going in the right direction, and we don't want any roadblocks stopping us from the progress that's been made so far in such situations as these. So we applaud you as your quick response. We just hope and pray that you continue to inform us of how those steps are being made and how they're being implemented as much as possible. I know you can't tell us everything, but there are some things that the public can continue to be aware of. We don't want this to be one of those situations that we hear about today and never hear about it again until the next incident happens. So we pray that you can continue to keep us informed.
And finally, let me say to the superintendent and the board members, I want to commend you for the collaboration that we had. As soon as we were made aware of this by our constituents, which is our community, we are the first responders. We reached out to you all, and we did not receive no pushback, but immediately you was on top of what we felt that was concerning to our children, which is our most treasure in the community. So it was an assertive, collaborative effort with board members and the superintendent, which was not contentious, because we were really serious about this. And when we saw that the resolution was happening, we backed off with our press conference. We told many people that it's a done deal. So we want to thank you, Superintendent, for being the type of person, leadership that you provide for collaboration. And we here to partner with you, but also we here to give you pushback when we feel that this district is going in the wrong direction. Thank you for the pastors who come out as chair of the Education Committee of the UBC. We want to work with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam President, may I respond?
Sure.
First of all, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for showing up tonight and for your consistent efforts to collaborate. To respond very specifically, and I'll be brief, the process is such that we have created a building decentralization of some aspects of the hiring process in order to make our stakeholders feel as though they are engaged in the process. To that end, there is a compact committee. Principals generally select candidates that they choose to interview for positions. The compact committee, which is comprised of teaching staff, non-certificated staff members, community members, and parents, are part of that committee. And they generally conduct the interviews and forward their recommendations on after they complete a reference check at that level. That happened to some extent in this case, but not as thoroughly as we would like to have had it be. We are still investigating. My portion of the investigation is complete. There is a second portion of that investigation that's being conducted by the board attorney. And once that part is complete, we'll be able to put all of our information together and make recommendations to the board. But in the interim, there are some things that we know need to happen, and that is ultimately making sure that we have procedures in place. As I said in my statement, sometimes bad things bring about good results, and this is one of those cases where it really has obligated us to look at how we are hiring, how we are vetting employees, potential employees in our district, and to review our hiring practices, particularly as it relates to diversifying our workforce. We do a pretty good job with that at the non-certificated level. Our custodial staff, our support staff is pretty well represented of folks of color. We have to do a better job at that at the certificated level. Now, administrators, we've done a very good job. A lot of our hiring at the administrative level is from in-district, right here in our community. The vast majority of our administrative positions are made up of people of color, and certainly many of them are either currently residing in Mount Vernon or have at some point. So this partnership with colleges to help us recruit minority candidates is really an important one, and then what we take very seriously. I've been working with Mrs. Gagnon-Kapusky to revamp our plan for recruitment and even having a minority recruitment fair designed specifically for our professional staff. So those are some of the things that you can anticipate. Once the investigation is complete, we'll be able to get back to you with more detail about what that investigation revealed and what steps we'll take in addition to those that I've already mentioned. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know you do, sir. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Crystal Collins. Ms. Collins? Jessica Walker.
Walker.
Shelley Ann Tenton.
Shelley Ann Tenton.
Nadia Mondesier. Lorna Kerwin.
I saw Lorna. Okay.
Yeah, Lorna's.
Good evening to all.
Good evening.
I feel like I should have been standing next to the clergy when it was speaking because on behalf of the parents here in Mount Vernon, we do also thank the superintendent for swift action with the teachers' situation last week. I know I reached out, parents were calling me left and right, and the first thing I did was reach out to his office. And as I was telling parents to calm down, because I know the superintendent and his administration and the board would handle this to the best of their knowledge and to benefit our the community and the students. So I just want to thank you for calming down the parents and also doing the best, making the best decision for our students in the district. And I also want to echo that during the hiring process here in Mount Vernon, in the Board of Ed, that we should look in the community when we hire in teachers. Teachers' credentials are good for New York City, and I do think that they should be also good for where they live here in Mount Vernon. So I just want to encourage everyone here to hire more teachers out of Mount Vernon, considering that they are qualified for the position. And one more point, I know that's a thank you. Parents also contacted me in reference to sports at the other schools outside of Mount Vernon High. Mount Vernon High is concentrated heavily with the sports, but when it comes on to Thornton and the STEAM, the parents cannot get any information as it relates to any sports at all. So I would like to just bring it to the attention of the board, if you could get the information out or have something on the website, because they said that they go on the website and there's nothing at all. So I'm not sure if the information is getting to the schools and gets stopped in the principal's office, but I just want to bring it to your attention that parents do want their kids to get to participate in sports, but they can't because everything is done at Mount Vernon High. So just look into the availability of the other schools for parents to get their child sign up to sports, the various sports. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Curran, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen.
Shauna Holmes. Janine Fertiel.
Good evening, everyone.
everyone.
Good evening.
Evening.
Fertile.
Janine Fertile.
How are parents supposed to advocate for schools if they're not even allowed to advocate for their own child? My son Ethan Fertile has attended the school since he was in kindergarten. When re-registration occurred, he was told that he would not be moved because he was grandfathered in. When the district decided to rezone, I was told there's no concerns since you're not even part of the rezoning and it will not impact you. Everything changed when I received a letter stating that my 6-year-old son would be moved to a new school. I contacted someone in registration, and I was told that they were in the process of moving to the high school and that they did not have time to speak to me. I got dressed and I went to the high school and I was told there was nothing that could be done. After I spoke to this person, I contacted others and I was also met with there's nothing that can be done. How could I live in a district where nothing can be done? It's a school district. I reached out to other people, and everyone I spoke to said there was nothing that could be done. Exhausted, I figured my son would be moved to a school where he would be met with his friends and classmates. The first day of school, I encountered that he was the only kid from his school that was moved. His entire 6th grade class had moved to the 7th grade, and he was the only child that was moved to another school. There was never a letter sent. There was no kind of notice sent to me. How could you do that to a child in 7th grade? It's really hard to make friends, and then to move him to a school that wasn't ready to even carry a middle school. So the school doesn't have lockers to store his belongings. He's asked to store his belongings into a personal closet with everyone else's. Why doesn't he deserve privacy like all the other kids? And then to watch the board meetings to see all the improvements that were done at his former school, where they have lockers, they have new advanced media centers, and he's at a school where the media center is non-existent. He's missing teachers for core classes, and I want to know why did the district choose to single out my son out of all the other kids who don't even live in the district still attend this school. Kids that live nowhere on this side of town, they still attend the school. Why was my son singled out?
Okay.
Dr. Hamilton, can
Yes.
you respond, please?
I'm going to ask Dr. Smith, who is more familiar with this matter and in terms of the process that was engaged. Dr. Smith, if you don't mind.
Good evening. Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Basically, as board members, as you're aware, many of our students who lived in a certain lived in a certain area had to go back to their zone school. We moved several people back. There's many factors that impact a student not going to a particular school. Students could be in special ed. Students, it could have been school choice. There's too many factors to mention here. I've had the privilege and honor to meet with this family, and they were very, very disappointed that their children had to go back to Trapegan. I met with the superintendent as well, but basically at some point they lawyered up, and I was not able to further speak with them because I was told that they had an attorney. As you are aware, many parents didn't want their children to go to their zone school. And of course, I don't have the privilege right now of getting into the detail of this specific case. If we would like to speak about it in private, I could do such. I know that the parent is very upset. She has met with me, she's met with many people on this topic and really wanted her child to remain at Pennington. Pennington, we had a very, very overwhelming amount of parents that wanted their children to remain at that school. You know, and historically, it's always been Lincoln. This year, it was Pennington. And we could not allow children to stay in that particular building, You know, it impacts, especially with the 7th and 8th grade students. The whole rezoning, redistricting had a lot to do with that we became pre-K 8 school, kindergarten 8 school. We had to look at class sizes. We had to also look at the fact that we had kids that lived in the community, that if we allowed many of the other students to continue to live there, it impacted those students right in the zone schools.
One question for clarity, and I know there's some specifics we can't discuss because it is a student matter. But is it accurate that this young man is the only 7th grader that was moved?
No, it's not accurate. She's speaking about Trapphagen in particular. We had students in all grade levels move from Pennington to various schools throughout the district.
And the,
He was the only student in his 6th grade class that was moved, because other than the kids who didn't live in the district who decided to move and change their schools, there were kids who weren't even registered for Pennington anymore. They were still registered in the class. And they said, oh, we received notices and we don't even live here anymore. So he was the only one that was singled out in that class, because like I said, there are kids who live on the other side of town and they were still placed in that 7th grade class. So all of his friends moved on to 7th grade. So he's the only one. He's the only one. When we got to Trapphagen, I was under the impression that he would have friends and classmates from his old school that were also moved. He was the only one.
Just for a point of clarity in terms of why the district took this approach, was, you know,
We were not part of the rezoning. He was grandfathered in to Pennington. We were not part of the rezoning. We had nothing to do with the rezoning. Our neighbors across the street from us that he went to school with in the morning, they still attend Pennington, so we don't live on the south side of Mount Vernon. We live right here on the north side of Mount Vernon. All of his friends attend Pennington. He has to watch them go to school in the morning because they start at 7:45 and he starts at 8:20.
well, we're kind of getting to a point where it wouldn't be wise to have this conversation publicly because of student confidentiality.
Unfortunately, I wanted to have it privately. I even hired an attorney to have this conversation. No one responded to my attorney. People would walk past me. I would come to the registration office every other day and no one's here to talk to you. And I would just stand there and people would just walk past me. So
Okay.
I would not want to come humiliate myself publicly, but it seems like the only way, this was the only option that was left for me.
Dr. Smith?
Basically, as I indicated, she's talking about her son's specific class. That's one class. We had to move many students, and in doing so, of course, some parents were not happy. I know that some parents went to other board members, and they went to you as well. It's an unfortunate situation that parents might feel this way, but again, I'm not at liberty to discuss this specific case. And if we want to discuss it in detail, I'll be more than willing to do so.
Okay.
And we
All
never
right.
received any notice whatsoever. We never received any notice saying that he would be moved. And even when I spoke to someone in your office, they said, oh my God, this must be a mistake because there's nothing in technology that states he was supposed to be moved. And so I was like, well, maybe she wasn't on the inside because she would not have given me that information. So no one anywhere knew that he was supposed to be moved. No one.
And what, since you're having the conversation, Madam President, can I continue?
Yes, you can continue.
What conditions would you like the office, Dr. Smith in particular, to consider that would result in a waiver of this? I'm not sure what your ask is. I'm assuming that you want him to go back to Pennington, but we need to know what conditions should the administration take into consideration to honor that, because there are probably, 84, 85 other students who were moved, Dr. Smith?
I don't understand what you're asking me.
What is your reason for asking for him to be able to remain at Pennington?
Because it's 7th grade. 7th grade is really, these kids have all been together since kindergarten to 7th grade. It's really hard to make friends at 7th grade. At his new school, he's already been told, you're the new kid, you better stay in your lane. oh, you're the new kid, you can't sit here. Oh, you're the new kid, you can't do this. He even ran for student government. He wasn't chosen as the president
Well,
because, because no one knew who he was. So what I'm asking is to be considerate of a 12-year-old kid. You can't just strip him of everything he knows and just put him into a new school.
But that would require that reason would require us to make that concession to every student in that situation, which we're not able to do.
But he wasn't supposed to be moved to begin with because he
Okay.
was grandfathered in. There are other students who are grandfathered in, and no one moved them. No one moved them. They're still there at the school.
Okay. If you can give my office a call, I'll meet with you offline. If you will call my office, I'm telling you, I will make sure you get a meeting with me, and I will hear what it is you need to say. But do understand that I cannot make an exception that I cannot extend to every student.
For an exception, I'm asking for
Okay.
the same rights that the other students.
All right. If you will give my office a call, ma'am, I'll be glad to meet with you.
I have given your office a call, I have sent you emails, and you've given me dates in the future. I cannot wait another month or two to have a meeting with you. You told me that.
I can only meet with you when I can meet with you, ma'am.
Ms. Fertill, I must ask you to just give your information to Rick McCormick, the clerk, and the superintendent has indicated that he's going to meet with you. He will set up a meeting with you. So I ask that you provide your number so that the meeting could be set up and allow the superintendent the opportunity to address your concerns privately. He is in front of the board, in front of everyone, saying he will meet with you. So please allow him the opportunity to do that. Okay, we can't continue this. We need to continue with our
Can I have
meeting,
a-
and your time is,
Can I have just one word with Ms. Castillo?
no, not right now, sorry. We need to move on. So the 3 minutes have been,
It's really sad that parents are treated this way.
It-
And then
but-
it's to break a parent down so much at the beginning of the school year. What do you expect from me throughout the school
Ms.
year?
Fertill, the superintendent has offered to meet with you, and you've come here and you've shared your concerns. We've heard your concerns, we're listening, and we want to address them, but this is not the proper forum to continue. So I recommend that you give your number because he will meet with you. Please. Okay, then he will set up a meeting with you to continue this conversation and to address your concerns. Okay, thank you so much for coming out this evening. I appreciate your coming to our meeting. Are there any other speakers?
David Patterson.
Hey, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, my name is David Patterson, a parent of a Pennington student. I don't want to get into the specific motivation as to what brought me here tonight. There was an issue similar to the young lady before me, where I followed up with a meeting and asked about the instructional focus of the school and specifically the instructional leadership of the school and how decisions are made or what have you. It would be slightly more able for me to stomach if we had some results behind it. So as I met with the superintendent, I let him know I'm a data-driven person. I'm not into the fluff or the parades and things like that. I don't really do that type of stuff. In terms of celebrations and such, it has to be, to me, measurable goals. So me, I'm a New York City teacher. I live right here in Mount Vernon. As an African-American who teaches social studies, fully certified or what have you, I'm definitely not putting my resume in because ultimately I have to go to the instructional focus of the leadership. And this is what I see. And I do apologize, I'm just very direct when it comes to numbers, but the priority for us has to be to produce a population of literate citizens. I live in Mount Vernon, and the appropriate measurement of producing literate citizens are the standards. So when we look at the standards, we have to start evaluating whether this district is a failing district or a successful district. And I think it's fair to just alert that after having this meeting and kind of seeing things that were just pretty wonky when it comes to the education field, which I have a master's degree at, I just saw some things that were pretty appalling. 93% of our 8th graders are illiterate at math. More than half of our children are below level in ELA, 72% 5th graders, 69% of our 7th graders illiterate in ELA. We are producing a population that is illiterate. And, we talked about teachers and staff and even administrators that don't have to go home and be amongst citizens that are illiterate. And the citizens here, they absolutely do. So I even discussed with the superintendent in terms of just living in Mount Vernon versus living outside of Mount Vernon, running into somebody like the clergy said at the grocery store or at church or what have you. You're not going to be running into these citizens. So this has got to be a top priority for us because we're producing a population of illiterate citizens compared to Yonkers, New Rochelle, and White Plains. Our third graders, our seventh graders, and our eighth graders are absolutely dead last. So a lot of these decisions could be better warranted if we had some statistics to back it up. Spending $17,221, we're top 28% in spending. Meanwhile, we're dead last in results. So let me get to my question. As the instructional leader with resources of the top 28%, but results on the back end of the list, what are the measurable goals that I can hold you accountable to, and what time frame? So if you're agreeing with me that these numbers that I just gave you are unacceptable, then they must be changed in a set amount of time. So what are your measurable goals and the set amount of time? And I imagine we'd have a far less fluff when it comes to parades and what people are taking pictures of and singing and dancing and all the rest of it. I'm a numbers, data-driven guy. What are the numbers and when are we going to hit these numbers? That is my question.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Dr. Hamilton, would you like to respond?
What Mr. Patterson is referring to is not something that I can give off the cuff. I think part of our goals, we're actually going to be doing a quick workshop this afternoon on our Managing for Results process, which will get to some of the strategies and plans. But in terms of identifying what those particular measurable goals are and what those timelines are, that will happen, of course, with our strategic planning meeting with the board, where the board will establish what those goals are, and then we will act accordingly. But at the end of my report, Dr. Gorman, Dr. Jangnagnan, and Dr. Bennett Conroy will be doing a presentation on our Managing for Results process, which will get to part of your question.
So if I could clarify, because these are the results from last year. Right now, we don't have any measurable goals that are posted on every school building, in every office. Every administrator that reports to you is preaching like the Bible day in and day out to get those scores from dead last up. That's what you're telling me.
That is not what I'm telling you. What I'm
So
telling
where are
you
the measurable goals, sir?
what I'm telling you is the building principals, every school has measurable goals that they aspire to accomplish. At the central office, our job is to provide the resources and the strategies to make that happen. In terms of a district-wide goal, which is created by the board in collaboration with the administration, that is part of the post-2020 strategic planning that we are in the process of doing now.
So essentially, there's no answer.
There is an answer. The answer is every building principal has established building goals based on where their students are right now and where they anticipate those students will be by the end of this year.
Gotcha. So if I go to my child's school, they'll have these goals set up, and I could go there and get that information.
That is correct.
Not a problem. I will check on those and get back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Are there any other speakers?
Our
this
final
evening?
speaker this evening is Miss Cynthia Crenshaw.
Rick.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Cynthia Crenshaw. I am the PTA president of Parker School. And when this incident came up about this teacher, I must say that the board jumped on it immediately. They came out to Parker School. We had a question and answer session. The superintendent answered the questions. And listening to him today, I see that he has incorporated some of our ideas into his planning. And I just want to let you know that the Parker family sincerely appreciate the entire board coming out and listening to our concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My next thing is that my granddaughter, was in summer school at the school on 3rd Avenue, and a little girl gave her peanuts, and she went into shock. I am so happy that the nurse there took care of that immediately. The only thing I understand is that the EpiPen was outdated. So I'm just saying to make sure every school has an active EpiPen that can be useful, because the doctor told us 15 minutes would have made a big difference, a big difference. So please make sure that the EpiPen is up to date. And once again, the Parker family would like to thank you for coming out and letting us know what's happening. And we're waiting to hear, once you finish the investigation, what happened. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Crenshaw.
Thank you, Ms. Crenshaw, for your comments this evening. Next speaker.
Our final speaker this evening is Ms. Crystal Collins.
Mechanical problem with my vehicle, and that's the reason why I'm actually late. Hi, Nick. I'm surprised to see you up there. Okay, I don't know if I have to be so formal, but my name is Crystal Collins, and I reside at 101 Oakland Avenue, Mount Vernon, New York, and I'm a parent of 4 young African-American Caribbean descent young men, 3 of which are enrolled in the Mount Vernon City School District. I'm a homeowner and a taxpayer of this community. I was appalled to hear that the city school district found it to be okay to hire a teacher who was investigated by the AG's office and found culpable of cultural insensitivity and terminated by the Bronxville private school. If the teacher wasn't deemed fit to teach in Bronxville schools, why the city school district of Mount Vernon would find the same teacher credible to be hired and teach at the Cecil Parker School, where the student population is comprised of 86% African American students. I know, sir, that our district superintendent stated that it was a systems error and that you have corrected by terminating this teacher. I'm standing here this evening to call for Ms. Rebecca's official termination. I want to request from this body a copy of the board's policy and human resources procedures for hiring. My questions to the board are as follows. How did Ms. Rebecca's resume make it out of the HR when in fact she was just investigated by the AG's office 5 months ago? Did this teacher reveal the reason for leaving her last place of employment on her application? And if she had, what was the compact committee's rationale of excusing the charges and deeming it okay to hire her? What was the vetting process and who conducted that process? Is it the responsibility of HR to perform the official background checks, and was that performed prior to the administration's hiring approval? Was this hire vetted and processed by the school administrator or by the secretary? I would like to request, if I could, a list of the individuals who made up that compact committee. That interview and voted on this teacher to be hired, and was it 51% parent approval? My final question, and I know they're meaty, but it's necessary, because this is affecting me as an individual and as a parent. What procedure do we have in place for hiring teachers, and are we seeking qualified candidates that reside in the city of Mount Vernon? Is there a process in place to ensure that all new hires are culturally sensitive and understanding to the population that they serve? And if you don't have one in place, I am willing to be on the committee, because I can personally say I've met teachers that are both black and white, that they are culturally insensitive to the needs of our children and their families, and many of them are tenured. It is my hope that as our community is and becomes more diverse, and considering our community is predominantly black and brown, we have an administration that reflects that on all levels. You say that you want to make certain that you attract the best and the brightest candidates to work with our most precious commodities, our children. It is my parental duty to stand up and command the same. And it is my belief that every school in this city of Mount Vernon should receive that same attention. So from this day forward, I will be galvanizing some of the parents, hopefully 120, to make up a contingency that at least we can come here once
Excuse
a
me, Ms.
month.
Collins, you've exceeded your time
I
now.
appreciate
Please wrap
that.
up.
But again, thank you for your time, and I hope that our questions will be answered at the next board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Do you want to
Okay.
respond,
Yes,
Ms.
I
Dr.
may.
Hamilton?
How are you, Ms. Collins? A couple of your questions I answered before you came in, and some of them I can't answer because the investigation is ongoing.
Okay.
What I can share with you is that generally, the candidates that are selected for consideration by the compact committee is selected. The principals go right on the online process and select the candidates they're interested in. The one exception to that process will be if there is an internal candidate that is seeking a transfer, then that information will get forwarded from HR to the compact committees. But otherwise, principals make their own selection of candidates they're interested in. That process is such that once that interview is complete and candidates are forwarded on, the principals generally do a reference check, and then HR does the onboarding process. The onboarding process may be checking additional references, discussion of salary, drug screening, criminal record check, those things that are not conducted at the building level. Additionally, in terms of the other issue that you raised, which has been the outgrowth of this, is really looking at our practices for recruiting minority candidates, particularly at their certificated level. Non-certificated level, we're pretty diverse. At our certificated level, there is room for improvement, so we're working to do that, and we have partnered since this incident, extended that partnership with some of our local colleges and making connections with some of our historically black universities in order to support a minority recruitment fair that's in the planning processes right now. The other questions that you've raised will have to come after we've been able to complete the investigation. My part is finished. There is another piece of it that has to be conducted by board attorneys, and they are planning to wrap that up hopefully within the next week or so, and then we'll be able to give our full findings and recommendation to the board at that time, and then we can make it public. In terms of the documents that you're requesting, you can certainly complete a FOIL request, and that request will be vetted appropriately and determined whether or not that information can be shared with you.
I appreciate it.
All right,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Thank you for your comments this evening, Ms. Collins. So we're going to just revise the agenda a little bit because Dr. Hamilton hadn't completed his report. So I'm going to ask Dr. Hamilton to complete his report, and then we'll move on to the next part
Great.
of
Thank
the
you.
agenda.
Thank you.
Dr. Hamilton.
Just by way of information, at the next board meeting, the October 15 board meeting, we will be providing the board with an update on STEAM students and the Lehman College partnership, and just letting you know how that fared this summer, the types of experiences that our children were able to gain and what that partnership means for the district. And we will also have a presentation on a school district grant we received to combat gang prevention. And the police academy will share, the Mount Vernon Police Department will share information through the Office of School Improvement on the police academy for some of our MBK fellas. And with that being said, I'd like to move into our MFR, Managing for Results process, and I asked Dr. Gorman if he would begin to facilitate that conversation by sharing that information with the board respectively.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so the Education Committee meets once a month, and one of the things that the Education Committee asked for, and Trustee White was there and Dr. Ning was there as well, and we met last Wednesday, and one of the things that, a follow-up from the summer was to look at our data and see how we're moving kids into proficiency. So in the beginning of the school year, the Office of School Improvement through Dr. Bennett Conroy, she met with a data team and each one of the principals, and they actually broke down every one of their students as far as proficiency ratings, 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. We identified bubble kids and are now devising strategies on how to move those kids through small group instruction and other resources, educational resources that we have throughout the district. One of the things that came up a couple months ago at our board meeting was looking at the 7th grade algebra kids and the math results, and we talked about that in I think September or the end of August. As a follow-up, Dr. Jagnandan, who is the standards administrator for mathematics and science, took the education committee through an exercise the other day, and it was an hour-long exercise, and one of the outcomes was this is very insightful, and knowledge is power, and we'd like to share some of that knowledge with the rest of the Board of Education and the public. So I've asked Dr. Jagnandan to recreate that process, and so this is a tri-effort through the Office of School Improvement, through the Deputy Superintendent's Office, through the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. Also, Dr. Conway, we were speaking about the ESSA regulations and the Every School Succeed Act and the improvement that we're seeking throughout the district. And those are also recorded in the school improvement plans and the SEP plans as well. So Dr. Jagnandan, if you could engage us for about 10 or 15 minutes with the board, and we'd like to sort of recreate some of what we did at the Education Committee. Trustee White, anything you'd like to add to that in your committee report? And in general, we're open to feedback. But we wanted to show you the general direction that we're moving in with working to reach higher academic gains for our students in each one of our schools.
So good evening, board members. Good evening, superintendent. Good evening, Mount Vernon City School District. So I'm going to actually walk you guys through an activity. This is a little bit different than just a presentation because we're actually going to walk you through an activity based on the handout that you received. I want you guys to take a look at the chart that says teacher profile, and it's color-coded. And without me doing any of the explanation, I'm just going to spend 1 minute discussing, thank you, discussing what that chart is. So this is a profile of a specific teacher, grade 7 math teacher, and the students were taking algebra last year. The input represents the level 1s and level 2s coming into the class. So it's actually the colored paper. And without any explanation, I want you with your elbow partner, grade 8 teacher, sorry, with your elbow partner to just write down 3 facts that you've noticed based on that data profile. I think I've done this activity several times at the school level. Our committee members actually engaged in this activity. So without me going into further details, I want you to spend about 3 to 4 minutes and write down 3 facts that you notice about that data profile.
What is, supposed to be looking at this, or are we supposed to be looking at this?
We had some female.
What does that mean? Is that proficiency level? Accountability is proficiency? Oh.
Dr. Jack?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Hi. I'm going to ask you to, as we've been here before, can you repeat that, how exactly what we're doing right now again? Just so that
Sure.
it's clear?
So the input represents the 7th graders moving up to 8th grade. So I've given you the New York State 7th grade scores. That's your input. And how well the students actually scored on the 2019 algebra regions when they were in 8th grade. And without any explanation, and this is the part that I want you guys to talk to your elbow partners, what are some things that you notice about our students entering and how they're leaving in terms of levels, pass rates, and things of that nature?
All of
So we're comparing
This with this?
the scale scores here to the scale scores.
except for one.
Yep.
Except, but two of them didn't show any.
Vastly different.
Yep.
Turn around, right, and do the
There's
Right,
only,
I forgot what he said about these students
there's only 3 threes
show.
and 1
how
4.
They didn't, then they came in, I guess they were new students. They also showed that, that they went up and,
That's the big number.
that's the big number, plus 950, which is very high.
That's a very big number.
That's a very big number. And it also shows that some of these
So
kids
11 are at 2. Oh, there's more students.
they did poorer and
If you're looking at the
short,
total score as opposed to the
extended
scale score,
part,
I have no idea what he wants us to look at.
short exended response, they
We're gonna be
did
the
much
elbow
lower
to
than
speed.
they did in
Melissa,
multiple choice.
That's a good observation. What data are you comparing?
the data.
So this
all of them.
Yeah, all of them did.
Okay,
This
fine.
is showing
Well, what
that the
about the
dog
three-
need
what- okay.
More reading skills, how to attack the problem and reading. What else?
Somebody's in
Um,
so basically, 1, 2, 4 of the kids who were on the bubble progressed.
So I'm gonna give you another minute.
At least.
No, we're good.
And the bubble
One stayed the
kids
same and
are-
3 went up.
Correct.
Right.
Our bubble kids are the kids right on the cusp. They could, 10 more points might be, they will make them a level
What
3.
your highest one, almost a 2. Are we comparing?
Yeah.
And your highest 2s.
Yeah,
Okay,
you're
okay, okay.
almost 3s. So these are the kids we're gonna really start.
So the bubble, this guy went, yeah.
And they all went up here. And these people saw, some of them stayed the same.
Yeah.
Not many of them
Bubble
went.
kids, they won.
Overall, they mostly stayed the same. They did
1,
better.
2,
So, you know, showing progress.
3 went up.
They
3
went from
bubble kids.
68.
Like 3 out of 4 went up. Right? Yeah.
And statistic and probability, they scored very low too.
That's right.
No, I'm just trying to understand what he's asking for.
Yeah, because
All right, so let's actually get to some of
So it's the same kid.
the facts that you guys noticed. Any of the board members? So I'm gonna go one board member and one of the audience members. So who would like to start us off, or else I'll choose?
Wanda, since you're the educator. I did.
Go ahead, Lana.
Do it, Wanda.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I know, I didn't quite completely understand the exercise, but I was never great in math. However, I noticed that 3 of the bubble students progressed to the next level.
Perfect. And just keep in mind, I want to give you some explanation right now. Any student who is on the bubble, those are the students that's 1 to 10 points away from the next level.
Right.
Okay, so that's why it's really important as we think of groupings and looking at the superintendents managing for results, we really target those students in terms of providing some extra assistance in the classroom and also at our academic power hour. Good question.
So does-
Anything from?
I have a question, a follow-up question, please.
Sure.
So that means, what you're saying then is the other, like 11 or so students are nowhere close to moving out of the category they're in?
No, that's not what I'm saying. As you can look at some of the data, all of our, actually, I'm going to ask an audience member, and I'll come back to your question, Darcy, in a minute. Anything that you guys notice in the audience? Yes.
Hello. I noticed that a level 4 student gets the most performance index points at 250.
Yes. That's the highest.
So that's an important piece. So our level 1s, according to the state, they receive something called performance index points. So though all of our level 1s receive 0. Our level 2s receive 100 performance index points. Our level 3, 200, and our level 4s, 250. If I look at the input and the output of this particular teacher, how many points did the cohort of students came in with?
800.
How many points did they leave?
1750.
So that teacher pretty much gained this, how many points?
950.
950. So this particular cohort of students who normally wouldn't have access to an algebra course did pretty well. How many students actually passed?
They all did, except for 2.
So 15 out of the 17 passed. So we started this process, and this is getting back to Dr. Hamilton's MFR, Managing for Results. We started this data protocol through the Office of School Improvement. And it was meeting with every single principal to actually establish some targets for their buildings. Mr. Patterson mentioned he wants to know what are the targets for Pennington. So based on their proficiency, the superintendent and the cabinet has established something called proficiency targets. Those are students scoring level 3 and level 4. on the New York State exams. So for every single school, based on this process, we've created something called SMART goals for every single school. If you guys look on page 3 of your packet,
I'm sorry, can we really quickly, just for clarification
Sure.
purposes? You said for purposes of high school, 2s, 3s, and 4s are passing.
correct.
For middle school and elementary school, which is where those state tests occurred, proficiency does not include 2s, correct?
Proficiency does not include 2s, but we do get points for our level 2s in terms of them calculating something called our performance index points.
Correct, but those were not reported to the public. What was reported to the public was the proficiency. Those were the
Correct.
scores that were reported.
Correct.
Great.
Correct. So something has to be said about starting this process very early on. We've started with every single school. We've met with every single school. We've established targets. Schools now have to go back and do 2 things. Establish SMART goals for the school, and then meet with their teachers and establish SMART goals with the teachers. And you see some of the examples of the SMART goals on page 3 and 4. It's by school and by teacher. So when Dr. Hamilton and the cabinet actually meets with the principals again in about 2 to 3 weeks, these are the SMART goals that's going each school and each teacher will be held accountable. All right. Any questions right now? Well, so that's an internal decision. You know, we don't really speak about it publicly, but remember, the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, School Improvement, we need to support our principals and teachers in terms of meeting these targets. So the superintendent is going to establish some targets for every single school by the end of, I would say, the middle of November or the end of November. We'll have, as Mr. Patterson says, you will have your targets for every single school. So the next steps is about identifying now some areas of need. So if you look on page 3 of this document, it's easy to write a SMART goal, but to identify areas of concern, that's where you have to study the data. So we're asking every single school to look at our students. There's 7 groups of students, and the 7 groups of students, I'm going to ask Wanda, what are the 7 groups of students that every single school has to identify, and also the teachers have to identify in their classrooms? I'll help you out, Wanda. Help you out.
Pop quiz.
Level 1, level 2, level 3, non-bubble, bubble, level 4.
Well, you're there.
Okay.
So level 1 has 2 groups. Our students who are on the bubble, that's 1 to 10 points away from a level 2, and our students who are non-bubble. There needs to be different interventions for those students. Our level 2 students, once again, our bubble and non-bubble students. So I'm up to 4 groups right now. Our level 3, we have our bubble and non-bubble students. And then our last, we have our level 4. So our teachers need to start looking at our students differently. They need to plan activities for those 7 groups of students. And to make sure, if we really want to move our students, once again, you always hear about targeting the instruction. We have to target activities to make sure, as Mr. Mitchell always asks me, what are our students, what are our teachers doing for our students? And this is exactly what we're talking about. Okay? So different modes of presentation so our students understand the concepts that they're going to be tested on. Okay?
I have a question. Isn't there an 8th level?
Excuse me?
Isn't there an 8th level, which would be 4s who are on the bubble for 5? Isn't that what, like, IB is going to address? And no, but I mean, just, what do we do? I'm not saying I'm just saying, ostensibly, we have students, we have a lot of very bright students in the district who are going to top colleges and universities who have finished all their AP tests by the time they're done with their junior year, and so they don't have any courses to take. So those, I'm assuming, would be kids who are on level 4 who would bubble up to the next level if there were one. So I'm just curious, we're also going to pay attention to that.
Absolutely. So we have to maintain our level 4s. So that's a really good point. So we, as a school district, we just don't want to teach to our lower tier students, our level 1s and level 2s. We have to address our level 4 students. That's really important. Imagine I can tell 4 students in this particular class that if they go to a CUNY or SUNY school, they don't have to take a math remedial exam. Isn't that amazing in 8th grade to know that stat? Any student who scored an 80 or above on the math regents, any math regents, they don't have to take a remedial course, because guess what happens in the remedial course? You don't get credit, but most importantly, what do we worry about? You have to pay for it. So imagine some of our students are spending 2 to 3 years just paying for courses that they don't have to take. So the superintendent, the cabinet, and all the officers for curriculum instruction, school accountability, we want to make sure that all of our students are getting the resources and the instruction necessary to move them.
So,
So
I'm sorry.
some of our students who are level 1, there needs to be a long-term plan for those students. In 1 year, it's very difficult to move students who are level 1 that are so far behind. So what are the long-term plans? And that's a discussion that's occurring right now at every single school. Question,
Yeah, I have a few actually. So I think everyone understands that bubbles are easier to push, right? We
Correct.
understand that they're within 10 points of the next level. That's I don't know how a nice way to say, like, it's a quick way to get your scores higher. I get it. But even on this, where we have level 3s mentioned, we have level 4s mentioned, there is a mention of getting everyone up 1 level, but there's no mention of 1s and 2s. On the second page, there's, we're looking at 3s and, level 4s again. I guess I'm concerned that these don't leave out, because you mentioned now, well, we're not leaving the level 4s out. I get that. Where are the 1s and 2s on?
So the 1s and 2s we always focus on. The 1s and 2s are the ones that's getting the extra academic support in terms of the power hour. So they're getting a lot of assistance. They're also getting the reading specialist inside the building. They're getting the core instruction where they're differentiating. We're not leaving out level 1s and level 2s.
If it's not here on that's what I'm asking. Like, if it's not one of the SMART goals, then it's not a checkbox. If it's not a checkbox, who's following up with that is I guess my question.
So this document actually has the level 1 included. So some of the action steps that needs to be taken for our level 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Yes. So part of this is writing a plan for every single group of students. So the 7 groups of students, we're not excluding any groups of students here. So we want to make sure that every single group is identified and we can provide the necessary support, but the buildings already have their school comprehensive education plan that speaks to a lot of the interventions that they're going to use.
I think I think Melissa just reacted to the fact that the example you gave us, it only has one goal, and that goal is only for level 3 and 4 students. Are you saying that this is just an example, and the actual sheet that a teacher would fill out would have goals like this for
Correct.
every single of the sections?
Correct. They would have goals for our level 1s, level 2s, level 3s. I was trying to condense it to 1 page. So if I wrote all of those pieces, but once again, we have to look at, the superintendent always speaks about those proficiency rates increasing. That's why I included the level 3s and level 4s and those students who are on the bubble. Okay. Yes.
So that's right. That's what I picked up on.
So correct. So that was one of the pieces that's implication for PD on that first page. So that means that there needs to be a problem-solving strategy for all of our students, and we do have that, but including that on an everyday basis for the specific teacher. Yes.
And if we have teachers that are rated as effective or even highly effective, how could that be if the data reflects that they are teaching without rigor?
So once again, it's negotiated APPR, so, so those are some of the pieces that, as a district, you know. All right. Any other questions? So once again, I want to summarize. We've met with every single school, looked at last year's data. We looked at their current data now of the students sitting in front of them, and every single teacher will have a SMART goal. Every single school will have a SMART goal, but more importantly, every single school will now have action steps for the 7 groups of students in front of them. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Dr. Hamilton, we wanted to give you and the board a snapshot of some of the work we're doing. Part of what we're up against is, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And this type of work is allowing us to go deeper in our process. So one of the things that, one of our immediate things that we're trying to do is have our supervision of principals reflect what we'd like to see with teachers, and that is through the pre-observation process and the evaluation process. And so it's one of our internal goals is to have teachers come with their student data to pre-observation conferences. So we're not looking at general, we're looking at specific. And then as we help teachers design rigorous types of instructional practices, we can give them feedback that is productive to improving the practices as opposed to the general suggestions that we may have looked at where that is common practice in the educational field. So we just wanted to give you a little snapshot of what we did because there's a lot of good feedback, even a positive discussion on moving our 8th graders to algebra, all of our kids to algebra, which is an indication of rigor, along with AP classes and other IB programs. Trustee Miller, I do want to let you know that I was at the high school and we met with the IB consultant the other day. It's incredibly positive culturally and looking at rigorous strategies and bridging to get to those higher levels of thinking and understanding and differentiation, and looking at next-gen standards and backward design and unit studies that we're currently looking at with some of our BOCES experts as well.
Great.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
As a biologist and many other things, I'm extremely data-driven myself too. However, where in this data, this is extremely important data, and I'm glad we measure this way. But at what part of the process do we account for the why, right? Like if a kid's at 1, why is that? You know, you may have 17 ones in your class, and some of them are there because they can't read, and some of them are there because they can't get to school on time, and some of them are there because there's family situations going on. There's all sorts of reasons why kids don't succeed, and a huge piece of it is the data, and without the data, you're flying blind. But armed with this data, then how do teachers approach the non-data parts of this, right? To really get at the heart of, well, some of my ones really need this, but some of my ones really need something very different in order to succeed.
Yeah, so there's soft data, there's hard data, and soft not being a bad word. It's
Yeah,
qualitative,
yes,
it's
yes.
important data. There are certain strategies in the cultural programs that we are bringing to the district that really speak to the why. One of them specifically is AVID. AVID focuses in on the why, and during our presentations, we talked about Simon Sinek's work being partnered with why, and Dweck's work on the mindset, on the growth mindset. The beautiful thing about the why, at least to get to those higher levels of rigor, is that those kids are going to be with the same teacher for 4 years.
Right.
So you really get to the intimacies of what is going on in life. The other thing that I want to talk about with you, since you brought it up, is that we're trying to move more towards a project-based curriculum. And you saw that at the STEAM Academy. Looking at the sustainability goals of infrastructure was a win, I think, in our part, because the kids were owning their own why in their community. And so they were identifying real problems on that. The frustrating part is you just can't jump from rote learning to higher level thinking by just saying do it. It has to go through a process. And so we're really excited about the new cohorts of kids that, for the last 2 or 3 years, that we've been really putting research-based and research evidence programs in place, not ignoring the other cohorts, but we're excited about the little ones coming up because we know those practices have been different than they were 5 years ago or 3 years ago.
And just to repeat something I know you brought up at past meetings, but the idea and the great potential of this data, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you measure this way, you can do it, and I'm going to use the wrong adjectives, but like both vertically and horizontally, meaning you can look at classes and evaluate specific teachers based on, like you showed us, right, input versus output, but you can also track individual students, right, and see like, when did they make jumps from one level to another level, and then when did they stagnate for 4 years, or whatever, right?
Absolutely. And then, so it's a yes and piece, right? So yes, I'm talking to you, we're talking in a theoretical framework, and then we know what the practical framework is. So it's combining those two and individually get to all children. And those are the attempts, is to make those learning smaller and more intimate, and to really, teach with love. I mean, that is a common theme that we preach and we believe in, and those are where you see great schools. And so that's one of our goals as well.
Can you please speak into the mic so we can all hear you?
Also, we look into data warehouse when the kids take the test, and you can see exactly what they're failing, whether it's comprehension, whether it's fluency,
Right.
and we gather from that as to what the child is weak in, and then we come up with a three-year plan for that student to make sure that he's successful. So we look at all that data, and then the teachers will also look at it and say, okay, my child is failing in fluency, my child is failing in comprehension, what can I do to improve in that area? So we looked at what the data is saying further down in data warehouse.
So while there will always be occasion to celebrate, and we should continue to celebrate and have parades and sing and honor our students and our teachers for their progress, that in no way is an indication that we are where we need to be. This process, this MFR process, is an ongoing process. It's a multi-year process. We've already started planning. Buildings do have their building level goals. We're now rolling them up into district level goals, and those goals actually should be on the website, on their set plans as well, that have been submitted and approved by the state. So this is the MF process that we've been rolling out, which is in a large part responsible for how we make sure kids are not falling through the gaps, specifically by identifying district level, school level, grade level, then by teacher and by student, what the needs are instructionally, what the resources are to move the needle on student performance, and then continue the upward mobility that we've experienced in terms of student outcomes. And that concludes the superintendent's report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. So for our next section, our next part of the meeting, I'd like to collapse the board member reports and the committee reports. We have allocated 15 minutes for each, but in the interest of time, what I'd like to do is go around and have committee reports presented first, and then if any other board member would like to give a report about something that they have participated in the district or something they'd like to make note of, I will call on you, just ask to be called. So I will start with committee reports, and if you wouldn't mind starting the clock so we can stick to 15 minutes, okay? So, give me a second. All right. Trustee Munoz Patterson, do you have an audit committee report this evening?
I do. So the audit committee met on Friday at 9 a.m. Because I took it over halfway through the year last year, it was kind of a little, it didn't feel as fluid, and we didn't feel like we did everything we wanted to do. So this year what we did is we contacted a whole bunch of people in the public and found out if anyone wanted to join. We did have some people interested. We have 4 members, not including myself, so we'll have 5 members of the executive committee of the audit committee, and then we will have anybody else who'd like to join us is more than welcome to do so. We are expecting that there should be a draft audit by next week for the board to review, and then the committee will be reviewing it after that. The one thing that was substantively discussed is that we would like a follow-up for a report from the Envision implementation that was suggested from the audit from last year. So that's the only thing that substantively was discussed. We will be meeting, next meeting will be next Friday at 9 a.m. and we'll be looking at the risk management with our internal auditor to see what sections or what areas of the district we think are ripe for issues. Thank you.
Thank you,
I have a
trustee.
question. Can I?
Ahead.
How are we contacting those people from the public who have submitted their interest to be on the audit committee from the volunteer standpoint?
If we got a resume that somebody was interested in, they fit one of the criteria that we thought was important, we reached out to them.
Would you have done that already by now, or should
Yes.
people still be waiting for calls?
No,
All
we've
right.
done that already.
Thank you, trustee Munoz Patterson. Trustee White, do you have a report on the Curriculum and Instruction Committee or something you'd like to add at this
No,
time?
I think they did a fantastic job, and Dr. Ning really has the report.
Okay, thank you. Trustee McOwen, do you have a policy committee report this evening?
I want to just talk about the second reading of the new policy, but I'll wait until the end of the meeting to do that.
Okay, thank you.
When we do the second reading.
Okay, great, thank you. So I just want to give a budget committee report. The budget committee met on Friday, September 13th, and also on Friday, September 27th, to continue our review of in-district transportation. There's been a subcommittee, as I've mentioned at other meetings, evaluating our in-district transportation to see if we can quite possibly collapse some of the routes, consolidate them, and conceivably capture some savings for the district. As you know, we've also started to work on the budget for next year, and we're looking to identify areas where we can capture savings so that we can keep our budget to what it is now with a fairly minimal increase, if any, but there'll be more information coming on that as well. Just give me a second, let me go through my notes. Okay. The Budget Committee is also commencing a review and anticipating any additional costs that might be involved with the anticipated opening of Mandela in the fall of 2020. There are some items that we'll have to review to see whether there will be any additional expenses that have not been budgeted for, and we will provide information and updates as we gather that information. Let's see. We discussed last year's budget and certain overruns that were caused by our transportation costs. As you were informed, our transportation increased because the district had to go out to bid, and unfortunately, the resulting amounts added additional expense to our budget, and that has necessitated the review to try to realize savings and other efficiencies within the transportation budget. So that's something that we're continuing to do. And among some of the other items that have created some additional overruns in the budget, there was, hold on a second, a couple of items for related to capital projects and repairs. Okay. We are currently continuing to work on the proposed 2021 budget and looking at certain items. We've requested certain deliverables, excuse me, certain information that we anticipate will, okay, yeah. We've requested certain information that will inform our budget process going forward, but mostly we're looking to identify other areas where we can capture savings, not just in transportation, and there'll be more information to come. Our next meeting will be held on Friday, October 11th at 8 a.m. here at the Education Center. And that concludes my Budget Committee report. If anybody would like to add at this point any information that they'd like to share, feel free. Trustee White?
This was, I was at Parker's PTA meeting, and they just were acknowledged. They received the Good Apple Award for 100% of growth for membership growth.
Oh, that's great.
So, and they're on the gold level, and the award is from New York State PTA. So I just wanted to bring that
Great.
up, that they did.
That's good news. Thank you for sharing that. there any trustees at this time who would like to add or
I'd
share
like
something?
to
Trustee
share.
Munoz Patterson?
So this weekend, the library had their Comic Con, and it was fantastic. It was really great. There was a lot of events, and I will say the Batmobile was kind of my favorite, but that shows my age.
And the Ecto one was there.
I didn't.
The Ghostbusters vehicle was there too. The original.
That was not my thing. I'm sorry. It was
both.
Batman. I apologize. But through the members of the library board, they also introduced me to one of the heads of one of the comics that actually does a anti-gun violence comic, and they had reached out to us, or they're reaching out through me to see if we'd be interested in bringing some of that into our school district, so something else to kind of think about. And they said it was free and it would be a fantastic idea, so just for your information.
Thank you, Trustee Munoz Patterson. Would anyone else like to add? Trustee Williams, is there anything you'd like to add at this time during
No, thanks.
the board reports? No? Okay. Trustee Saunders? Okay. Trustee Miller? No, nothing? Okay. Trustee Mitchell?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, thank you. So, hearing no more comments, I'd like to move on to the next part of the agenda, which is...
Madam President, can I
Yes.
just ask, when do we give our student representative the opportunity to speak specifically?
Actually,
This evening, I actually told Nicholas to just come and observe.
Oh.
So he's probably not prepared for anything tonight. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Are you prepared to do it? Okay. So I did tell him to just plan to observe tonight, and then we'll brief him on what he needs to do for the next meeting.
All right, but you're an equal member here, so you want to say something, you say something.
feel free. Okay, thank you. All right, so the next part of the agenda is the human resources resolutions. Can I have a motion to, wait, before we motion, are there any comments, questions? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the human resources resolutions? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Oh, wait, sorry. Okay. Can I go back? Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments? Sorry. We approved it, okay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, are there any new employees here today? Do we have any new employees? No? Okay. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the business office resolutions. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Any comments, questions, discussions?
Yeah, I don't see Mr. Silver here tonight, but
Mr. Zachariah is here representing the business office.
can you just speak about the transfers from the unassigned fund balance? I see these general fund transfers relate to this year. I thought in discussion it was relating to last year, but as for this school year, why do we have large general fund transfers happening already just less than a month into the school year?
Oh, I asked Mr. Silver this, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening, Sergeant.
I asked Mr. Silver this morning about that. He said the money is coming from the Thornton High School, where we had some monies budgeted for the repairs, building repairs. And since those monies are not going to be spent from Thornton, it will be used for purchasing some materials and supplies. In the maintenance of plant department, I texted Mike Liccio. I did not get an answer. I don't know if he has an answer. He's here. There is a budget transfer, $40,000, that is in the board agenda today. I don't know what kind of supplies are going to be purchased, but it is going to buildings and grounds, maintenance of plant, materials and supplies line. That's where it's going. What kind of purchases are going to be made, I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Mr. Palicia, would you be able to answer that?
So does that mean that the
Speak to that, please.
40,000 wasn't budgeted in this year's budget? I guess it does, right?
The building supplies that are being, the money that's being transferred for the, do-
I did not receive the text message that Mr.
okay. Okay. Never mind. I thought he wanted to know what who was it that asked about the building supplies or something?
We will
All right.
find out the answer and let you know by email, or I'll let Dr. Hamilton know about it sometime tomorrow.
Okay. Trustee McGowan.
So does that mean we should table that until we
I was
until we
just
have the
confused by the
information?
memo, because the memo talks about grant money from 2018
That's,
that,
Oh,
that's a different item.
That's a separate-
That's a different
That's a
item.
different
That's a
item.
separate-
attachment?
For us to
Yeah,
vote
a
on.
separate
one.
attachment and a separate.
Wait, that's number 1 or number 2?
No, number 1 is what you just talked about with
Oh, I'm
respect to the
sorry.
fund.
You asked about a
40,000
transfer, so
for
that's why I
building
answered.
supplies.
I'm sorry. No, I
Yeah,
did.
it's the second
I
one.
did.
Second item.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
did
still
you-
getting used to the news. There's like 17 attachments to this
I
agenda
know.
item, so.
Good
I
time.
I like the new format, but
I know.
it requires small fingers. Okay, I'm
still
good.
getting
I'm good.
used to it.
You good?
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments related to any other resolutions, proposed resolutions on the business office memorandum? Questions, comments, discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the Office of School Improvement Resolutions? Item number 9 on the agenda.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Any comments, questions, discussions?
No, not on this.
Any comments, questions, discussion? No?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda, item number 10, student services. Can I have a motion to approve the student services resolutions?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Are there any comments, questions, discussions? None? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, buildings and grounds. Mr. Palicio, can you please come to the mic? Can I have a motion to approve the resolutions for buildings and grounds?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Palicio, can you please explain what this change order is?
Sure. Actually, I'm working with Mr. Babiello, and he's going to run us through those change orders this evening.
Good evening.
Thanks.
Good evening.
So this change order is for the Graham additions and alterations project, or the reconstruction project, for RLJ Electric Corp. It's actually a combination of several smaller miscellaneous electrical items that they addressed recently for that project. Some of them were field conditions, a couple were omissions in the construction documents, as well as discovered conditions. So just to give a quick run through of what that encompassed, 2 that were not shown in the documents was a rerouting of some existing wiring that was necessary to perform the work. One of them was also provisions of new light switches in the first floor corridor, which was also not shown in the documents. Some of the field conditions included removal and reinstallation of existing light fixtures to facilitate new ceiling installation, which was a coordination item. Relocation of some existing fire alarm devices in areas that received demolition, as well as other existing wiring that was in conflict with new structural work that we had to perform. So when we did the removals and went to install the new structural components, when we created that new entry, we had demoed part of the corridor wall there. Some of the existing electrical conduit and the wiring within had to be relocated, but there was no way to determine that prior to the demo. As well as one electrical panel was originally scheduled for reuse, but we then found out that it served additional areas of the building that were
not known at the time of design, so we had to modify that panel and leave it in place as opposed to removing it and providing a new panel. So those were the general items that encompass it. If there's any specific questions with regards to those items, I'm happy to elaborate.
Does this complete the work for this contractor and Graham?
For this contract, I believe it does. The same contractor is also performing the IT and security project.
Oh, at all the schools?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I understand.
Well, at Graham, Pennington, and Thornton
Yeah,
currently.
yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye, sorry.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item on the agenda is appointment of audit committee members. Do we have audit committee members present?
No.
No? Okay.
How many members are on the, is this all the audit committee? Is it limited to a certain, are the audit committee members limited to a certain amount of people?
So technically, we're supposed to have 2 members of the public and the chairperson of the committee, and that's what we're required to have according to the
Has
charter
been
of the
an
audit
odd
committee.
number.
Yeah, which is why we went with an even number plus me makes it odd.
So Birdsford Granston is a new member?
He's
No.
been on it.
He's been on for,
All of these are old members. Yeah, I know, I've never heard of him. That's what I'm asking.
I'm going to just wait a minute and let trustee McGowan
I'm done.
finish.
That's all.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions regarding the members of the audit committee? Okay.
You just doing 12-1, or you doing all of 12?
Are we just doing 12-1, or is it go one by one?
Okay.
Oh, yeah, let's do that. Okay, can I have a motion to appoint the audit committee members?
motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay. Next item on the agenda is authorization to rename auditorium at Nellie A. Thornton School of Performing Arts. Can I have a motion to approve a name change to the auditorium?
Motion,
Second?
second.
Okay, any questions, comments, or discussion? Dr. Hamilton, do you want to say anything about it?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a policy second reading. Trustee McOwen?
Yes, thank you, everyone. There's no change from the first reading from the last meeting. I have personally received no feedback from anyone. In discussion with board clerk and superintendent, this will serve as the second reading again. Just the text is there. Please let me know if you have any comments. I propose that we do not vote on this at this meeting, and the reason being we are still finalizing the style guide to which this refers, which we hope to be ready by the next meeting. I guess, two specific things I just want to point out for the board and get your feedback on, if you have any. One is a provision about naming a school building or other property after someone who is deceased. I looked at several sample policies. Some policies just flat out prohibit that, at least for some kind of meaning for a waiting period. So you can't just, I don't know what the right word is, in the heat of your grief, rename, a whole building or something a week after somebody dies. There's a 1-year waiting period. So I'm proposing in this draft policy that we have a 1-year waiting period, which can be overridden unanimously if we want to. I don't know if anybody has any strong feelings about that one way or the other. Again, I looked at I think 7 different sample policies in other school districts. Some of them don't say anything, some of them prohibit it. The other thing which I've seen in several policies is that while generally renaming parks, auditoriums, anything like that can be done just as a simple board action, I have seen some policies suggest that renaming an entire school would require 2 votes at 2 different meetings as opposed to be doing it only at 1 meeting. So that sounded like a decent idea to me to make sure
I agree.
We don't have feedback from the community without even hearing anything. So I suggested that as part of the policy, and I'm hearing no pushback from the board about that. So anyway, these are all things that were there already in the first reading. I'm just highlighting them. And again, the intent is to put this for a third reading and adoption at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Trustee McCohen. Next item on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes for August 9th.
Madam President, before you move on, if I can just take a moment to acknowledge, I just see Rachel DePaul is here, who was awarded tenure tonight, our Assistant Director of Special Ed. Congratulations, Ms. DePaul.
Okay, thank you. Congratulations. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting of August 9th, 2019?
A motion.
Second? All in favor? Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Abstain?
Abstain.
I said aye. I was there.
Okay.
I said it.
Mr. Trustee Miller abstains, yes.
Abstains. Okay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, acceptance of the minutes for August 20th,
Motion.
2019.
Second.
All in favor?
No, please.
Oh, do you have comments, questions,
Yes.
discussions?
Trying to
Okay.
make a correction, which,
Okay.
I went through.
look at there's a part that says the motion passed unanimously. That's the beginning of the line in section 2.
Is this on this,
Yeah.
on August 20th?
Yes, correct, yes.
Where's the correction?
You see the line that says Mr. Policio reviewed the change orders?
Yes.
Right above that. This. The motion passed unanimously. It says, Ning, McCohen, and Mitchell were not in attendance at the meeting. I was in attendance.
Got it. Correct.
Yeah, okay. It's corrected?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you believe we actually read this stuff? We do read it.
My apology.
Okay.
All right. Any other comments, questions?
No.
Okay. I can't remember if I said motion to approve.
No, your motion, we have motion, we're just voting now.
As modified.
Okay. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay. Next item on our agenda is going to be our roundtable discussion. And for tonight's discussion, we will be talking about customer service in the district. And given the events of the past week, on even the events this evening at our meeting, I think it's a timely topic for discussion among board members, especially as we look to improve the quality of service that we provide to our students, to our parents, and other stakeholders in the district. I think this is something, an area that we all know there's always room for improvement. Even if you're doing a great job, you can always do a stellar job. So I'd like to open the discussion this evening. I'd like to hear from trustees what your thoughts are. I know many of you receive lots of feedback from members of the community, from neighbors, from family and friends. And I know that this is an area that we'd like to address, and we would like to see a significant improvement. We want to be able to be responsive to our stakeholders. And we want to be able to provide the best service we can, not just with what we're entrusted to do, which is to educate our children, our students, but also just being a good neighbor and good academic provider. So I open up the floor to my fellow trustees. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this issue. Trustee Saunders, would you like to begin?
Well, I just, I know that the issue of Parker was staying on the board members as well. So I'd like to go, going forward, the board members, when we have resolutions for new hires, to have a copy of the resume and the committee reports on all the new hires.
The compact committee.
The compact
Compact,
committee,
yeah.
yes.
I'm sorry.
Trustee Munoz Patterson, would you like to speak?
Please.
Yes.
So I think what tonight really highlighted to some extent is the frustration that a lot of parents have, and I've experienced it myself as a parent. I try very hard not to ever pull the trustee card because I don't think that it serves a purpose if I can get something done where somebody else can't. You okay? Okay. And I think we really need to be cognizant of how we present to the public, and for somebody to feel so frustrated to come in here and be to that level is not fair to the family, it's not fair to the child, it's not fair to the parent. And the reality of the situation is that if I call a school, I should get a live body. If I call here, I should get a live body. I'm not saying that the person always needs to get the answer that they're looking for. I want to be clear about that. I don't think that, whatever our policies are, that's what our policies are, and that's what we should follow. But the fact of the matter is, if somebody, continues to look for help and continues to reach out, and our best answer is, that's not sufficient. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of the parents feel like they call here and they don't get an answer. And that's something that we've spoken about before. I know that we've talked about getting a switchboard person here. I know the last time we talked about this conversation, I think there was a conversation about a switchboard person here. That way you'd always get a body. I don't know if that's the answer. I can say I've tried to call a few of the schools, and I've generally not gotten a person at the school. And as a parent, if I call the school, I want to speak to somebody there. I'm not saying I have to speak to the principal, they have to be available at all times, but I would like to speak to a person that is there, that has my child in their care.
I know that I had a meeting with Mr. Felicio a little while ago. They are renovating the, I guess it's the security office, to have a live receptionist switchboard person there, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right, Dr. Hamilton?
Yes, ma'am?
Where is that located?
Downstairs, right when you
Here,
come in
downstairs.
underneath the stairs. Yeah.
Does that mean people can actually walk off the street and go into the front door under where it says Education Center?
Yes.
And see a person?
Yes, and it's a switchboard there.
That would be fantastic. I think it's really
Who's
weird.
going to be doing that?
Yeah.
Is that a new hire, or?
I believe,
Will
I
be,
can't answer that.
there are some FTEs that have not been filled, and one will be allocated to that, yes.
I think it's important that someone is allocated, and I know the person will be trained, but I think it's important that it's not just a switchboard. That I think that there's got to be serious training about the reception that parents receive, guests receive,
and where to go in the
students.
building.
It has to be more than just a switchboard. I think it has to be someone who's prepared to receive parents who may be frustrated, who may be upset, who may be experiencing some personal challenge in the school district with their child. And so I think what's key is that we are empathetic. I think first and foremost, yes, we have to be professional, we have to be trained, but you also have to be empathetic. Because this isn't, we're a business, yes, but this isn't a corporation where we can be, how can I say, focused on certain items here. I think it's important. We're dealing with children, we're dealing with parents, we're dealing with people who have real feelings and real responses and real concerns. So for me, what a priority would be is to make sure that there is training to provide empathy so that we can be able to, serve our constituents.
It's customer service, actually, as well.
Yeah.
I think that zoning, among other things, is just a sore spot, and rezoning is a sore spot for the district. I'm a parent in this district for years now, and we've been faced with that challenge before. I've heard other parents talk to me in the street before I sat on this position at this table, and I've shared stories, and people have shared stories with me about how they feel that they can't, there's so many different things and can't get through. And I've been one of those people who have called and said, hey, can I speak to so-and-so? And so-and-so's not here right now. They'll call you back. And now I've grown a whole new set of hair, and that person hasn't gotten back to me yet. So it's a frustration. And as we're looking towards trying to bring more parents into be involved in our district, which is what we are hindered from right now, we are hindered in that. I think that customer service is key, and it's this person who's going to be sitting at that front desk cannot just be here to collect a paycheck. They have to be here to know that these people are coming in. They have to be compassionate. So the other C word is going to be compassionate. If you're going to have someone come in and people are going to be irate, they have to be prepared to. They have to be. This person has to be trained to know how to deal, because that ultimately is going to give parents to start feeling more empowered, that they should feel empowered, so that they will come back and they'll be involved and want to feel like their voice counts even more for their own children. I think that's crucial.
I think in addition to perhaps empathy training, we really need to establish expectations for the return of phone calls. I feel that things go into a black hole, and I just think it's critical that we have a standard that is shared with everyone in the district who is, well, we're all public facing, we're all facing the community, but there should be a standard, and we should put that on our website, and people should know that they will get a call back within 24 hours, at least saying we're considering this, whatever, but we just need people to be accountable, and we need them to return the phone calls and to check their voicemail and to check their email, because I don't think it's done in a timely fashion. I mean, a lot of us board members don't even do that either with some of our emails, and it's hard. We've got our personal emails, we've got business emails, but I just think we have to establish certain standards and expectations, and we have to hold people accountable to do this, and that should minimize the frustration in the community, which would be great for everybody.
I think that's also part of our efforts to raise our standards. So we want to raise the level of achievement, academic achievement in the district. We want to raise the level of performance. I think we also have to raise the level and the expectation, just what you said, with our staff and hold people accountable and raise the level of professionalism as well. I think that's part and parcel of that. As a board, I'd like to know what we would like to see and do about it. I mean, it's great that we're going to have a switchboard person or a dedicated employee, but what else can we do?
Training. I think training for even standing employees in the building. I think there should be some sort of diversity and compassion training, or whatever you would call it. I think that they should be required. It should be a requirement that they take these training sessions and they get a certificate that says that they completed it. I think that there's names and people that I've called in this building for several years now. They're still here, and I still don't get callbacks. So in those situations, I think that it should be a mandated thing that an employee in this building that works here at the Board of Ed should be getting trained on how to deal with the public and deal with us as we are deserving. I think that's definitely a good idea.
I don't know to the extent we already have this, I assume we do, but there needs to be a chain of command that is clear to those inside the administration and clear to the public. Because what happens in this and every large organization, if you don't have clear chains of communication, is that the buck always stops with whoever actually is competent enough to take care of it, right? So you get people who are amazing at their jobs, like the parent liaisons, right?
There they are.
Who are amazing at answering all questions that they get, even if it's not really their job to answer that question. That's just one example. But I think that it needs to be clear and consistent, and it shouldn't matter what. Obviously, you always have a relationship with your teacher. You'll always have a relationship with your principal and your parent liaison, and that's great, and you should. But the standards that people report to should be the same at every building, right? And if you have a question, it should be very clear to you whom to call, or we have a toll-free number or a 914 number or something, and it's one phone number. And you're guaranteed, if you're a parent, that you call that number and somebody will get you to a real person who will actually answer your question in a timely way. And until we have that, we're going to fail. We'll never have customer service until we have that. It has to be a phone number and a real person who can actually respond, and or divert to the parent liaisons or somebody else who will actually follow up and respond on your question. And I think a walk-in thing is ideal. As long as it's real and we commit to it and we put real people there who will actually answer questions, and we do it year-round, and it's not just a one-time registration thing, but it has to be real. We can't I don't want to be vulgar, but we can't like half-ass it. If we're going to really do customer service, then let's be real about it, okay? And let's commit to it as a board.
You know what you're referring to is a parent resource center, and I had another school district come in and do a presentation for Dr. Bennett Conroy and the parent liaisons. Everybody wants it. I think the board needs to decide where they want to locate it, because I know that Dr. Bennett Conroy has a certain opinion about this, And I know what some of the other school districts have done, where they have placed their parent resource centers. And I do not think that a switchboard operator is a parent resource center, and don't even have
No,
any
it is
expectation it's
not.
going to be, and I wouldn't have anybody walk in to see that person, because that's not the person, that's not a parent resource center. We need a parent resource center. It needs to be open. You can start just being open a couple hours a day, but it is the go-to place. And it's not expensive. There's a blueprint for this. Many districts have done it, many districts like ours.
Yep.
And I would like to move forward with that, and maybe that's a new business discussion, or maybe we can discuss that at a retreat. We need to find a place for it, because it is the #1 priority for us. We cannot do customer service without a parent resource center.
Yeah.
Full stop.
No, I fully support that.
So Trustee Miller, can you just tell us a little bit more about what
I was
this
gonna say, can we see the
Parent Resource Center would entail? And you can summarize, and at some point in the future, maybe we can have a presentation.
I can
But I'd
bring-
like you to just talk a little bit more about that.
Well, what I was exposed to at last year's New York State School Board Association meeting in New York was a presentation from members of the Hempstead City School District, which is very similar to ours demographically. And I was so taken with what they'd done with so little. It didn't cost a lot of money, and obviously you could use grants to get that started as well. I mean, it's something you just have to find somewhere to start, and they started in Hempstead with one room in the central office building, and it was open for X number of hours a day, and they staffed it with a psychologist, everyone was bilingual, like a customer service person. And it grew over 2 years. I think they've applied for nonprofit status. They're going to be running it as a self-sustaining business, nonprofit business. But the point being that you just start with a couple of tables, a couple of phones, and a couple of caring people, and you do it in a place where you do registration, you do it in a place, where parents ordinarily would come. You do it in a centralized place, and they know that's my go-to place, and you build from there. And they grew to having activities on, like, board night, evenings when they had Board of Education meetings. They would have the programming for children in the Parent Resource Center, and parents would come to the meeting or whatever, and the children would have programming. They had computer banks that they set up so parents could come in and use computers, could understand how to use the iReady stuff, how to understand what their students are doing. I mean, it was just, we do a great job of outreach into the community with our math nights and all those things, but this would be a center that would always be there, and there would be things loaded on the computers that would provide resources to parents that need them. So it doesn't require a lot, it just requires the will to do it. And I certainly believe we have the capacity within this district to do that. And I will, whatever meeting you want me to present ours, I will bring in the presentation and we can show it to you. But it's a very compelling idea, and it was started on a shoestring. You just have to have the commitment to do it.
So I think that's an excellent idea, and it's something that we should plan for a future meeting. I also think that in the interim, before we actually get the Parent Resource Center up and running, that there are actions that we can take that can conceivably provide guidance for our parents. So whether it's an org chart on the website that will tell them where they can go if they have an issue. I mean, we've heard parents come in and complain that they've called this office and they were rerouted to another office, and they were sent all over without an acceptable resolution, without a resolution. And so I understand that lack of, I understand the frustration, but I think that that's something that we should be able to readily address before we get the Parent Resource Center physically up and running. I can imagine that creating an org chart and putting numbers and names associated with different situations on the website would be such a cumbersome task to do, but it would be something that would at least provide an interim remedy for parents who are looking to have their questions answered, to have their concerns heard.
And,
So,
and I'm
Trustee
sorry,
Munoz
really quickly,
Patterson.
just to jump on what you said.
Yep.
Maybe even a chart of like, I have this question.
Yes.
Right.
Not just like, because
FAQs.
somebody doesn't always know, oh, the
Where do I
person I
go?
would call if I have to change my address is pupil services. So maybe it's, if I have to change my address, where would I reach out? If I have to do this, where would I do? And then we can have, we can come up with a few different scenarios, and that may help people, again, feel a little more comfortable making that phone call.
That could be on the district site as well.
Of course, of
District
course.
site, that'd be great to have FAQs just so the parents, since we push the district sites as much as we do, and it's still not utilized as anywhere near. I mean, I've had Dr. Jag come to our school and homes, and he's told our parents how many different ways, and Dr. White Wallace has come to show our parents how many different ways the district site is available to parents, and I don't believe it's truly utilized to what its true might is. And the FAQs, have FAQs on that site, it's just another thing that parents can have as a resource. I think it's a great idea.
Can we just ask the parent liaisons to consolidate a list of the frequently asked questions that they hear, and we can put something together? Because I'm sure they hear them.
Yeah.
And then let's get answers, and instead of them answering on the fly every time, let's just have something to point them to.
Absolutely. I think that's great.
So Dr. PC, is that something that you can coordinate with the parent liaisons?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
And also, they're beginning a parent portal training.
Okay.
Parents going to use a portal. I was talking to Sharice. And when I see the rest of the parent liaison on Thursday, they're going to get training on using parent portal.
Great.
So that's a great piece.
Wonderful. I mean, I think these are all steps that we can take now. We don't have to wait, and even, creation of information on the website, that's something that should be readily achievable, I would say, by the next meeting or two, by the time it's all assembled. So I think that's a great idea.
Did we ever have a district app? Do we have an app?
There
'Cause
was.
I mean, that's something that could be very, one of the things, and I'll really look forward to picking Nicholas's brain about this subject, like how to get parents involved with the website, all right? Because a lot of people say, I don't know, I don't have the answer, but some of the answers, or many answers, are actually on the website. But try as we might, we can't seem to get people to go there and use it as a resource. So hearing from students about how they think we might be able to improve it would be awesome. But I also think that app, if parents had a school district app, it could also be a conduit for questions, concerns, things that come up on transportation, what have you. I don't know. I'm just suggesting that maybe that's something we could revisit also as part of the overall customer service experience in the district.
Sure. So this conversation isn't going to be concluded today. This is a conversation that we're going to have, that we will continue, because it isn't just, an opportunity to air your thoughts, but we actually have to proceed and take some action on this so that we actually put action behind our words. So we will continue this conversation at some other time. So thank you, trustees, for your input and feedback this evening. Mr. McCormick, do we need to enter into executive session this evening?
Yes, we do. We need a motion to enter executive session for the discussion of the employment history of a particular person or persons.
Is there a second? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay.
How long?
We're going into executive session for about approximately how long will we be in executive session? Okay, we will be in executive session for approximately 30 minutes. We don't anticipate that we will take action upon return, so we will conclude our meeting thereafter. I want to thank everybody who came out this evening to attend our meeting, and I especially want to thank our newest member, Nicholas Justino, and I hope you all have a very good evening. Thank you. Public session?
Motion.
We already did that.
Oh, we did
That's
that?
already been done.
That's, okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.